War Eagle Auburn family, welcome back to another edition of E2C Network Live, where we get together and we talk about what's going on in the world of the Auburn family spectrum. Always heavy on the sports here on this stream, but if it's orange and blue, it is what we do. Today's live stream, I thought we'd talk about the NFL draft. Seems like an important topic right now, right? So I figured we would get on here, break down some of our thoughts, impressions about what happened overall in the NFL draft for 2021 for the Auburn football players in there, ones that went. Were we surprised where they went? Were we shocked or were we not surprised? We'll break all that down, just some initial reactions. Not really hardcore, like looking into numbers and all that kind of stuff right now. Just impressions. I want to share mine and I want to hear from you. As we get started today, I do ask that, as always, if you do enjoy this type of content, we ask that you hit the like button, share it out, all that good stuff. It does help this stream. And then we're also going to share with you right now some things that you can do to help support the content that we do here for you on a daily basis. Easiest thing to do is to check out the description. All the links are there below if you want to access any of those. Speaking of which, you can try the E2C Network Booster Club for as little as $1 a month. It's the beginning of the month. It'd be a great time to sign up and get some cool free stuff not free stuff, obviously, but cool perks that come for as little as $1 a month. But there are different tiers there you can check out. We also do PayPal, TeePublic, where you can get our logo on a t-shirt, all kinds of good stuff. Easiest way, the most cheap way to do things, though, is just to listen to our podcast. Be here on the YouTube channel. Leave comments, questions. Speaking of which, here on the YouTube channel, I just posted another video where I broke down the Anthony Schwartz selection a little bit further. Felt just kind of had some time today, so I thought I would do that just with the time that I had. So if you want to go check out some like further detailed thoughts about all that, that's going to be there for you. So a lot of you are doing it as you going to pop in, hit that like button, but also post where you're watching from, city, state, all that good stuff, international as well. And a War Eagle want to know who is hanging out with me tonight, talking about some Auburn stuff here. I see a lot of familiar faces already popping into the chat. You have to forgive me, I'm going to drink a lot of water tonight because I was out doing yard work. And it was a little dusty out there. Let's see. Dusty says, as a diehard Buck, I was pumped to bring in another player, an Auburn defensive player. KJ can sit behind David and White and fine-tune his game. Bowles will use him. Bowles? Is that how you say it? Will use him well. Yeah, I think KJ is probably going to be one of the I won't call him a steal because I think he went where he was supposed to in most people's minds, but maybe a little bit later. But I think he's going to be the one that probably has the most solidified potential. Kind of, you know what you're getting with KJ, and he's probably going to live up to it. Surprised the Patriots took Jones. I really do not know how good he is, or not the team around him, or not, and the team around him was so loaded. Yeah, so we're going to find that out really quickly, right? Obviously, he's not an Auburn player, and he's the enemy. We can talk about that, definitely. Obviously, there's implications for other teams within the NFL draft. The team across the state obviously looked pretty good in draft night, the opening draft night, frankly. But throughout the entire draft, it is what it is. At this point, they're in their heyday, and the heyday will end at some point. Hopefully soon. All right. In review, again, don't be shy. Post comments, questions that you want to talk about with the NFL draft. But, what I thought, just to recap for those of you that maybe haven't been following, Anthony Schwartz won the second round. Fifth round was Jamian Sherwood. Then KJ Britt at the end of the fifth round. The sixth round was Seth Williams, and nobody else went. There was an outside chance that Jordan Peters was going to get drafted. That a lot of people kind of had him at the very back end. Nobody was really predicting him to get drafted, but he was like being as an honorable mention. So you kind of always want to. I had a thing prepared for him to post on social media if it had happened. But those are your 4 draftees this year. All of them, I think, were expected to get drafted, and they did. So it all worked out. Just a little bit frustrating for some about how long it took. Now the big game begins of the NFL free agency. And this is kind of where things get a little bit interesting. We've already had one in Elijah Stove get picked up as of the recording here. From Talbot, Georgia, between Macon and Columbus, former Lee County, Alabama resident. Glad Schwartz got drafted. Surprised Seth was not, or correct me if I'm wrong. He was drafted. I think you heard me say that. Just very, very late. Seth really should have came back. He has a lot to clean up. Another year could have improved his stock greatly. Not judging a kid for making decisions. I'm going to recover my mouth when I'm supposed to be doing a talk show. Not judging a kid for making that decision, just saying from a pure football standpoint. Yeah, I think that's a tough one to break down here. We can start there. Let's talk. I think, honestly, that's the big story. It should have been that Jamien Sherwood launched himself up to the top. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second because I don't think a lot of you listened to me enough on the preview show for the draft that I did about Sherwood. I knew something good was going to happen with him. But anyway, so Seth Williams. Unfortunately, I kind of saw this coming. I'll be honest, I did not think that he would fall that far, but he did. But if you remember from my preview, I talked a lot about it was going to be Anthony Schwartz first, probably KJ Britt, and then I was debating on who was going to go first, Sherwood or Williams. I was kind of expecting Sherwood or Williams to be in the back end, but not as far back. He really, and when I say these things, sometimes you get people who pop on here and get offended by you. So anything I say here, this is not a shot at Seth or anybody else. I'm just trying to give you my opinion from what I'm seeing here. I think Seth Williams has shown the propensity sometimes to have a little bit of I won't call it an attitude problem, but what's a nice way of saying it? I'm trying to think of a really nice way to say it. But we've seen him have some, tiffs on the sideline with other teammates. We've seen him, unfortunately, a couple of times take plays off when it came to blocking and things like that, and then miss some easier throws. So I think there were some things on tape that scared the people that could have taken him earlier because his talent is undeniable. We have not seen a guy with a catch radius like that in Auburn gear in quite some time. I'll go Darvin Adams might be in that same realm. Maybe Sammy Coates. Trying to think of some other names here. Courtney Taylor might be in that same realm. But we haven't seen that in quite some time, right? So I just think the talent, the potential that was there kind of was neutralized by some of the issues that we're seeing, whether they were football related or not. And that is kind of what resulted in Seth ending up where he was. I'm not going to sit here, though, and fault Seth Williams for going. Had Seth Williams, let's assume that Gus Malzahn, and again, and everybody cringes every time I mention Gus Malzahn, but there's a factor here. He was still the head coach, all that stuff, and he had chosen to leave early. I'd probably be a little bit more on everybody else's side that he shouldn't have left early. But, if you're a guy coming in your last year, you're kind of not wanting to start things over. You're kind of wanting to move on with your life. Seth is probably a guy that figured, even if I do fall in the draft, that I'm going to be able to show my potential, which I would agree with. So I don't fault him for wanting to go. I also don't think that he was necessarily given bad information. I think he just really wanted to take the risk because just kind of putting myself in his shoes without even knowing him, I do think that potentially he just didn't want to kind of start things over with a new coach, a new staff, all that stuff when he was so closely tied to that. Just kind of how it felt. But yeah, Dusty kind of brought up some of those points. I do think he had some things to clean up. I do think that he had potentially could have had a better draft next year. But, you think about it this way. You're going to have the same quarterback, the same offensive line, and a new system to learn. Is it really, going to be that much better for you next year? I hate to break it to the Auburn fans here, and I am I got used to be accused of being sunshine pumper, Mr. Overly optimistic, but I don't think people are prepared for the struggles that the Auburn offense is going to have this year. It's going to be a struggle, and I think Seth Williams knew that, and I think he was willing to take the risk. So I don't fault the kid. It is frustrating to watch him fall back as much as he did. Now let me go and flip this on its head a little bit. Do y'all remember what happened to Darius Slayton? He got, a lot of people. It depends on who you talk to. Some people said he went up higher in the draft than he should have. Other people said that he was disrespected too. Darius Slayton even commented on social media and said, hey, y'all are sleeping on this dude. And I'm going to be honest with you. Seth Williams strikes me as a guy that when he's disrespected, and to some degree he might have been, with his talent potential, that is the motivation that's going to make things click. Seth Williams, I think, is going to be a beast in the NFL now. In fact, I will venture to say, and I could be wrong, probably will be, this is the best thing that could have happened to Seth Williams, because he's going to be so on fire. He's going to see what happened with Darius Slayton, the way he was disrespected, and when he given his opportunity, had made the best of it. Seth Williams may be the next great Auburn receiver to come to the NFL. So, it could be like a trend that starts there. I think, we haven't even touched on Anthony Schwartz yet, but I think that's the biggest story from the NFL draft, is that Seth Williams fell so far, because there were a lot of people that expected Seth Williams to potentially go into the third round, the second round, something like that, and for him to fall back all the way to the sixth was a bit of a surprise. I was surprised, but not the way some other people were. There are people getting downright mad, and I'll be honest with you, I saw this comment, and this is not like one particular person or group that said this, because I saw it several times, that this was an indictment of the previous coaching staff. I'm sorry, that's the most ignorant statement that I've heard in quite some time. Do the coaching staff bear the responsibility of anything that happens with their players? Of course they do, in some sense, to some degree. But it ultimately falls on the players themselves. It's their responsibility to do with what they want, or to take whatever they're given, take the cards that they're given, and play with them or not. So the responsibility falls on Seth just as much as it does everybody else. But I am excited that he's going to be given an opportunity, that he is going to be able to potentially have this chip on his shoulder and move forward and be a beast, I think. It's okay. The Broncos need him, and Judy will be a good duo. I forgot that you're talking about Judy of Alabama, right? If that's the case, that he's got someone opposite of him like that, that could be a nice little matchup there. Let's see. Pensacola, Florida. I agree with your overall take. I understand your concern with the offense this upcoming season. However, I think the change in the scheme will actually help us in SEC play, and it absolutely could. Here's the kicker. I just said all those things. I hope so. I think when people see me dampen expectations for this next season, it's not that I hope it happens. That it's just simply I'm looking at the cards that are being dealt, and I'm not seeing a lot of setup that I like. Doesn't mean that when the river starts turning, if you guys understand poker analogies, things won't change very quickly. It can. Don't think it's going to happen, though. But yes, Seth Williams, obviously the big story. Let's see, I say this because the SEC has seen the same scheme from us over a decade, and some new plays and new film could benefit us. Great. Absolutely. Anytime you change things over, it's obviously going to give you a shot in the arm. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to have a bad year. I predicted, I think I've gone on record on a live stream at 8-5. I could see a 9-4. But I'm going to go with an 8-5 with a bowl loss right now. Is kind of where I'm sitting at right now. It's going to be tough for Auburn to beat Alabama, Georgia, LSU at home or in Baton Rouge. It's going to be tough for them to beat maybe Texas A&M. I don't know. It's going to be tough for them to beat Penn State. So that's 5 teams that they've got to beat. Woo! They can get one of those. They can get 2 of those probably. Can they get 3 of those? It'd be tough, but I think it's possible too. 4, no. Anyway, didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole so far, but we did. All right, so we talked about Seth Williams. Obviously, we can bounce back and forth because I know some people are popping into the chat right now. So if you felt like you missed something, we can kind of bounce back and forth. Let's stay on wide receivers. Anthony Schwartz, did that surprise anybody where he went? Were you happy? Let me know your thoughts on Anthony Schwartz and where he went in the draft. If I remember correctly, second round, what pick was he? 20-something? think it was second round, 20-something. I do think, he was kind of right where everybody thought he would be. There were some people really hoping he was going to go like the very beginning of the second round, maybe sneak into the first. But, you looked up and down. It was just a very busy wide receiver group that was in the NFL draft this year. So I am completely okay with where Schwartz did. I think he could have gone higher. Sure. I think his unique skill set, though, is a little bit scary for some teams. But if you go and watch the video that I did about him and the Cleveland Browns, I broke down a little bit about why I think he's going to fit in there very, very nicely. He's got a lot of talent around him. He's going to be a beast this year. Let's see here. Do you think Sherwood will move to outside linebacker because he's a little slow for a safety? Let me think on that. Take a sip while I'm thinking. So it's funny that you said this, actually. So I got somebody that messaged me as soon as he went, and they were like shocked. I was like, I tried to tell you. Some people said they saw him listed as an outside linebacker when they made the pick, but then I'm like, it's still listed as a safety. I think he'll start as a defensive back, safety, and then if they feel like he fits better into the scheme as an outside linebacker or maybe a hybrid, because some NFL teams do that. I don't know what the help me here. Not the Browns. I'm trying to remember who he went to. The Jets. I don't know how he fits into that scheme all that well, but his size would make you think yes, but we'll see. Schwartz will do well at the Browns. They have a good young quarterback. You talking about Baker Mayfield? Yes, I think that alone and they supposedly they're going to keep Odell Beckham, and they've got Jarvis Landry. And if you look at the ESPN website, the depth chart, and they already put some of the draftees in there, they put him right behind Jarvis Landry. I think that's going to be a nice setup for Anthony, where he's going to be kind of shielded by some of these bigger names. Rashad Higgins was another one. I really do think Anthony Schwartz is in the best possible situation, personally, because I think he is just going to thrive with all that other talent there. And then once because they're not going to keep Odell forever, maybe not even this season. And once he leaves, that's going to leave a vacuum. There he is. And he's got such a unique skill set. Get some time to put some more muscle on him. He's sitting pretty, y'all. Couple things. I do want to bounce back to Sherwood in just a second, but let's see. I think. What about KJ adding the AU pipeline to the Bucks? That's 3 in a row. How about that? So someone even asked me, "Are we now the? Is this the AU graduation point? Do football players we need to start adopting the Buccaneers as our next team?" It's a little hard for me because I'm not a Tom Brady fan. I recognize that he is the GOAT. I can't deny the man, his greatness, but I don't like him. So I'm going to have a hard time with that till he's gone. But it does seem very nice to have Carlton Davis, Jameel Dean, and now KJ Britt together on defense. There's going to be an Auburn dominance there. That's looking really good here. So, yes, 3 in a row. It's going to be very dominant there. It's, KJ, you know what you're getting. You're getting a quality. And look, I don't know KJ personally, but from everything that I've seen, read, watched, and know about his family just from, what you can learn from reading and watching things. He comes from a good family. He's a good kid. He's got a great head on his shoulder. He's smart, and he is an incredible athlete. You don't get the name Downhill, KJ Downhill Britt, for just giggles. You get it for a reason. So when you combine quality individual with quality athlete, that's a deadly combo. And it's a shame that he didn't go higher than he did. I think his injury is really what probably affected him a little bit in his draft stock there. Had he been able to play this year, had he not had that injury, he probably goes high 4, maybe up into a high 3. Because, he went ahead of Dylan Moses of Alabama, and that's a name that a lot of people expected to go much higher at the same position as him. And KJ Britt went before him. So that tells you something. Even with his injury, people are willing to take a risk with your injury if you are a quality. And let me go back to what I said about Seth Williams. Again, I'm not trying to disparage or imply things that I don't truly know about Seth Williams. I can only go off of what I see and what I hear. I think Seth had some things on paper and on video that showed there were some decision-making issues, some not, I hate the word attitude problems, but that's the best way I can think of seeing it. But when you combine, sometimes that's enough to neutralize your talent and potential. Whereas KJ, you see, he had the talent, and that almost neutralized out the negative of his injury. So it kind of worked the opposite way for him. And if he had not had that, it only begs the question where he might have gone, because KJ probably would have been much higher in the draft. So I'm very happy for him. I just don't see how. Let's see. I just don't see Schwartz doing much in the NFL. I doubt he can run NFL routes clean and consistently. I think the contact will be too much for him. The next best wide receiver prospect for us is Elijah Canyon. Yeah, it seems that way right now, but I have a feeling we're going to have some people kind of come out of the fog, so to speak. They're just going to emerge, and we're not going to be really anticipating them doing much. Yeah, I understand the concern about Anthony Schwartz as an NFL prospect. I do think he needs to put on some more weight, but I think, you don't go and draft an unconventional wide receiver for the NFL like him if you don't have plans for him. They're set right now in terms of what they have at wide receiver. They need just a little bit of extra pop. Anthony Schwartz provides that. Go watch the tape. Browns have good O balance. Yes, they do. Lifelong Buck, y'all come on over. Fire them cannons. Look, I'm not opposed to the Bucks themselves. I mean, when you draft or not draft, but go get a guy like Tom Brady, it hurts me a little bit, but that's just me. Is big on drafting character guys. Tampa already is a high character locker room. Well, never mind. I'm not going to say that. Todd Bowles will play to his strengths, and he will develop properly. Very fired up for him. Yes, I think KJ won, but I think Tampa Bay won in terms of the quality overall draftee. It's a steal. It is, really. Let me jump back to Sherwood for a second. For those of you that were here live or watched the live stream about previewing the NFL draft, you'll know that I made the bold prediction that Sherwood was going to surprise people. I even doubted myself a little bit on that, and I should have stuck to my guns and said he was going to go second, because I wanted to say it on the live stream, but I didn't. Jamian Sherwood, or as I used to try to call him, Jermian Sherwood for some reason, Jamian Sherwood is a beast. He was known for knocking guys' heads off. So the fact that he went second round, if you looked at all the draft boards, he was going fourth at best in the lineup of Auburn players. And he was going to go very far back. But he launches his happy little butt up into the top of the fifth round and is a nice steal for the Jets. Jamian Sherwood, to me, is going to be a guy like a Brandon King, who was not highly, highly thought of and kind of just, sunk into the background of the Auburn defense and did his job, but is going to find a home on an NFL team and do some good things for them, kind of like a Brandon King, that type of thing. Not a big name like a Jamil Dean or a Carlton Davis that people are going to be super excited about, but what you're getting is a quality football player. Not shocked that he went as high as he did. Well, I'm shocked that as high, but that he went second or something like that. So Sherwood, we've talked about Schwartz, we've talked about Seth, we've talked about KJ. Is there anybody else that you all think should have gone, might have gone if things had played out different? Like, any of that type of stuff, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the four as a whole? Or do you think this is a good draft class to represent Auburn? All that stuff, just kind of overall general thoughts. Because to me, I would have loved to have seen the old man, Elijah Stove, get drafted, because I think he deserved it after everything he's been through. He did. In fact, let me go ahead and check right now to see if anybody else has popped up. Elijah Stove did get signed by the Chargers which, kind of the only thing that would have been better if Anthony Schwartz had been gone to the Chargers. The flash jokes just write themselves. But the hot stove jokes write themselves too. So I would love to have seen Elijah Stove get drafted and do some big things on the NFL stage. And he might still. There was rumors out there that Jordan Peters was going to be kind of another dark horse for Auburn at defensive back. I didn't really see that happening, and so that probably was a wise prediction for most people. They didn't put him on their boards, but they put him in like the back of their list to say, hey, this might happen if the right team came along in the right situation. So Jordan Peters, fortunately, didn't get drafted. You'll probably get him signed. I'm trying to think of other players that I can think of that maybe should have gone or might get drafted or may not get drafted. But I'm not thinking of anybody at this point. So obviously, in terms of sheer numbers and star power, in terms of like making Alabama-type waves in the NFL draft, this is not the class for Auburn. Here's the thing, though. I'm very proud of what these guys have been through, and that they're going to probably go to teams that fit their best situation. As we've talked through it, I think Seth is in a good situation. I think Anthony's in a good situation. I think KJ is definitely in a good situation. Same thing for all these guys. So I think while the pizzazz of these draftees may not be all there right now, you've seen a lot of Alabama players get drafted high. How many of them are actually worked out? Not a lot. How many times have you seen an Auburn football player get drafted modestly and worked out? A lot of the time. And Coach Malzahn, in the oddest of fashions, created a defensive back pipeline for Auburn while he was there. Weirdest thing ever. Still continues. Jamien Sherwood was the dark horse and proved to be correct. So hopefully we'll see him continue the tradition of Coach Malzahn creating, recruiting, and putting defensive backs in the NFL. Never would have thought that. Let's see. My overall thoughts are we need to be putting more than 4 guys in the draft. I'm confident Harsin changes that, though. You will see the big recruits start coming in as campus visits open up. Dusty, that's a tough one for me to tackle because I love the optimism, but it's hard for me to get on board with that line of thinking that just because Harsin is the new guy, that all these things are going to be fixed. I believe that they can be, and I hope that they will be. I'm just not as sold on that right now, and I think time will only tell and change my mind on that. That's not a knock necessarily on Harsin, but by the whole choice to make a change this year that I think was unwise and ill-informed. And as I've said, any criticism that I've had from the coaching change has never been directed at Harsin himself. It's always been directed on the actual decision to make a coaching change in this particular context within this year. So I think Harsin unfortunately has already set at a disadvantage that I don't think most people are prepared for. Do you know how bad the complaining gets on Auburn social media in the Coach Gus Malzahn era? Can you imagine the complaining that is going to be happening when they got what they wanted and it's not fixed the way they want it to be? That's what I'm afraid of. Of course, the easiest way to avoid all that is just stay off social media. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. Obviously, I would like to see us putting more people in the NFL draft, so I agree with you, Dusty. I think that's probably the goal. I think, should be a solid goal to put somebody in the first draft every single year. That would be a starting point, and I think there are a couple of options that you can do that with next year. Not the next year. Tank can't go next year because you've got to have 3 years under your belt to leave, but Tank, if he stays healthy, is your clear first-round draft pick in 2 years. Who's going to be the guy next year that is the first-round draft pick? I'm not really thinking of – it doesn't really come off. It's not going to be a wide receiver. It's not going to be an offensive lineman. It could have been a defensive lineman. It might be a linebacker, potentially. it could be Roger McCreary. That could be your first-round draft pick next year. Defensive back pipeline continues, and that's going to be a Coach Malzahn product still. So it's the weirdest thing. In my wildest dreams, I never would have thought that we would be putting defensive backs at the rate we did under Coach Malzahn, but we are doing that. But all in all, 2 wide receivers, 1 linebacker, 1 defensive back. Another wide receiver is now on a team as a free agent. There will be many. I'm checking one more time. There will be many more to come in the next coming days and even hours. These negotiations usually last up until, up until the actual season starts. But you'll see a lot of them the next couple weeks. In fact, our guys on No Huddle, they're going to be doing 2 episodes. At least that's the last I heard from them. They're going to break down the draft itself for their episode they're recording tomorrow, which will come out on Monday, and then they'll do probably a next episode the next week breaking down some of the signees, which we can probably expect a few more of those. And they'll probably talk about other NFL Auburn-related news amongst all that because there's no college football to talk about right now. But anyway, all right, a couple things. We're going to start winding down our show here. I'm not rushing away just yet, so if you want to ask questions, post comments, all that good stuff, you can right here. A couple things to keep in mind. Ways you can help support what we're doing here. Big shout out to those of you that have joined the E2C Network Booster Club. Now's a good time to jump on the boat, people, or even come find out if it's worth it for you. I promise you it is. Even for as little as $1 a month, you may say, Kyle, what can you really do with $1? Well, it pays for all the expenses that come with housing well over 800 episodes of a podcast, working on towards 100 YouTube videos, running a social media account. All that good stuff is what it helps pay for. But there's also PayPal if you don't want to commit to a monthly payment. You can do one-time donations, buy something from the TeePublic store. The easiest way, and this is the easiest thing, the cheapest thing, is just to listen to the podcast, be here, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you can't find the podcast, if you need help with that, please let me know. But all the links are in the description. I'd love to help you in any way that I can. All right, if you have last-minute comments, questions, put them in now. I know a lot of you are getting in here late, but if you have anything that you'd like to share, you can do that. Will the Auburn NFL draft be better next year? As I told you, I don't see a lot of wide receivers leaving because they're all young. You'll probably see some offensive line go, but not very high. It's just my impressions right now. If tight ends become a bigger staple, which most people are anticipating, might see some of those. If Bo Nix chose to go and he has a decent year, he'll probably end up somewhere in the draft. Don't really know where yet. Running back, Sean Shivers will probably get picked up by somebody because he'll be a senior, I think. If I've got my numbers right. But everybody still has that extra year of eligibility because that all plays into this, which is going to be crazy anyway. But linebackers, you'll probably see, and defensive backs are probably going to be the ticket for Auburn in the NFL draft next year. All right, I want to head out today, guys, but I appreciate all of you for being here. That were live. If you watched this on the replay, we appreciate it as well. Smash the like button on the way out if you enjoy this type of content, and watch that video about Anthony Schwartz we just put out. Until I talk to you again, though, War Eagle.